Hello. Today, I'm going to be talking about a Sadhu, Sundar Singh. He is an Indian mystic, born in 1889 and passed away, it's believed, in 1929. It's a real fascinating story. This guy, born a Hindu, his mother was very religious. She had him go off into the area, going into the Holy Land, and not the Holy Lands that we know, but the Holy Lands for the Hindu, and worked with a holy man and was under him as a young child. And then as he got older, she had him memorize the Bhagavad Gita in Sanskrit, a whole different language and a whole prayer form. This is like considered a letter from God in the Hindu series of faith. And then, as she wanted him to be, the family wanted him to be educated, they sent him to this Christian school. And he really struggled with the concept of this Christian stuff. He just thought, this is crazy. I can't do this. I can't be on the edge of two different directions. It's just not okay. And so he actually made a vow. He said, I think tomorrow I'm going to kill myself. I'm going to commit suicide. I'm going to put myself on a railroad track. So that night he goes to sleep, and he has a vision. In the vision, Jesus is talking to him, and he's taken aback from this. So the next morning, instead of going to the railroad tracks, he goes to his father, and he says, I'm going to become a Christian. Now, it's another year before he gets baptized, and a year after that, he'll get kicked out of the house. But nonetheless, he just started really honing in on Jesus, reading the Gospels, diving into it. And before this, he had burned the Gospels. He had burned the New Testament that he had in front of his friends. And now he's just the opposite. He saw the Gospels and saw them, holy cow, this is what Jesus did. He gave things away. He went around and he preached to people about the good news. And so this Sadhu, Sundar Singh, does the same thing. He starts going around and he starts working with lepers, actually, and starts helping them out. And then about a year later after that, he goes into, this is the Anglican church that's out there as far as the Christians go. And so he signed up to be in a divinity school, and he's there, but he doesn't fit in well. He's wearing typical Indian holy man clothing, which just doesn't match at all. He's with his fellow students in prayer and in meals, but aside from that, they just want nothing to do with this guy. He's just an odd duck. Because they really push the fact that, if you want to be really in the church, you have to do it the British way. You have to have the British culture, you have to have the British ways of living, and the British ways of dressing, of course. That's how you do it. He didn't see it that way at all. So he ended up leaving the seminary, and then later, as he's going around and gaining a lot of fame as a preacher, there's a lot of pressure that says, hey, you should get ordained. And he said, no, that's not the way of Jesus. The way of Jesus, he just walked around and talked, and met people where they were and talked to them. Fascinating thing. And he was quite successful with it. And he's talking to a lot of different denominations, as well as there's a lot of Indian Hindu. There's even Muslims there. And they're all, check, what is this guy doing? As a holy man and Christian? This is just not right. And yet, he was so sincere that he had friends that would sponsor him to be making these trips, and he would make trips. And he actually toured in Britain and Europe and America briefly in 1920 or so. But his main thing was to just go around the countryside of India, and he would take these trips. And oftentimes, he'd have these miraculous stories of things that had happened on trips, whether it's visions or miracles happening. There's a lot of people that didn't buy into this. He didn't document anything. He didn't have witnesses, so they weren't really sure whether he was on track or off track. And yet many others thought he was the holiest of men. It's interesting how both are looked at from the same fellow. It makes you think about how people look at us. Do they see us as artificial and being hypocritical, or do they see us as being authentic and really true to the core? When he got exposed to the West, his biggest concern was there's so much materialism. They're just into things to own, and they're really into this materialism. They don't pray much. He said, how can you be a Christian and not pray? He meditated every morning before he did anything. He meditated and felt like he was really making contact with God. He would have visions from time to time, but he methodically prayed every morning. probably a good idea. I should pray every morning. He made several dangerous trips to Tibet over his life. And then in 1929, as he is kind of getting worn down and older, his friends highly advised him not to take another trip up there. And so he goes off in the distance, waves to his buddies, and is never seen or heard from again. They have no idea what occurred to happen to him, whether he met robbers along the road, whether he got sick. About 2 months later, after he did not return, his friends set out a search party to go investigate, see what happened. No one found him. But he leaves a legacy of a certain authenticity. Just read the gospel and say, what does it say to me? And then do it. And then be able to say it to others. I'd like to say it to others. The gospel is the good news. And it's something to be excited about in the now and in the here. And I'm sure that Sadhu, Sundar, Singh has led a lot of people to that direction. Let us only be that good.